Hello, Nigel. Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
Arun.
Hi. Can you hear me good?
Yeah,
Perfect. Great. So,
and you can hear me, I presume.
yes, I can hear you. I can put the volume a bit more up, but I can hear you well.
Okay. So, this is a fascinating thing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm really delighted that you actually agreed to at least have that interview. So that's really great.
I think it's probably one of the few opportunities we have to actually talk instead of, I don't know, writing things.
Yeah, that's actually really good to talk. But to just summarize very quickly what I'm supposed to do, I'm supposed to make an interview. We didn't have any much parameters on which we're doing it. But from that interview, I have to take out the like 10 points and then share these 10 points with the group. So just you have an idea of what I'm going to do. Um, and of course, I'm just really curious because you are just happen to be much longer in this than me. So I'm of course curious to learn always. Though of course I have strong viewpoints in some parts. So this time, actually, unfortunately, we don't have that much time to talk. So in terms of exchange, because I will be just letting you talk and letting you explain. So maybe we have another opportunity one day to exchange.
Okay, fine.
So my first question, which of course comes to my mind, which are actually two questions. I mean, how did you land up working on child rights? And then, of course, how or what triggered your interest in adoption?
Okay. So you want me to go on that?
Yes, I'm really curious.
Hey? Okay. Well, I came to child rights through an interest in human rights, not particularly an interest in children as such. But in the 70s, first of all, I started off actually as a probation officer, but in the British sense of the term, in other words, more a specialised social worker than an overpowering, repressive member of the law and order camp. So that was in England. Then I moved to Geneva very quickly, and but I was already into human rights in terms of being a member of Amnesty and that kind of thing on a very minor level, but nonetheless. And what I realised, over the years in the 70s was that human rights didn't really take into account children very much, children and young people. It was much more focused on adults. The human rights organisations weren't particularly interested in children's issues, and the children's organisations were all very much charitable and dealing with development and let's say the relatively uncontroversial issues of health, education, nutrition, this sort of thing, where basically everybody agrees, even if they don't necessarily agree what needs to be done about it. But it wasn't undertaken from a rights standpoint. It was undertaken very much from a charitable standpoint. And little by little, particularly looking at issues of child abuse, but trying to put that in a wider sense. In other words, not looking at it from the point of view of just, which was current at the time, of intrafamilial child abuse, but looking at the other actors, including the state itself, and trying to work on that level, first of all, to bring things more into what I would call a human rights plane, rather than looking at it as a private affair, if you like, within the family, this sort of thing. So little by little, I developed my thinking on that, and then I decided, well, partly because I was thrown out of the organisation for which I was working because I was taking this human rights stand. I was working for a children's organisation, and I decided I made a lot of contacts with, in particular, human rights organisations, in order to see if there was a need for something, for an organisation, an international organisation that was dealing with the human rights of children. In other words, if we set something up, would we be stepping on their toes? Would they see it as some kind of competition, or would we be filling a gap? And we continue to potentially fill that gap for the foreseeable future. And the response from people at Amnesty, International Commission of Jurists, etc., was, yes, you would be filling a gap, and yes, it's worthwhile having a go, So in '79, I set up Defence for Children International. And I'd already had some, let's say, I was already familiar with the inter-country adoption issue, in particular because I'd been working on Latin American programs for this NGO. And I had gone, I remember very well, I'd gone to Colombia, and there I'd been shown, the rows of children in cots waiting for potential adopters from abroad to be chosen, and that already made me feel, uncomfortable, let's say. And then in the first years of Defence for Children, DCI, we came across, an increasing number of problems in that sphere. Unfortunately, at the start, we didn't have any money. We had no resources, so we couldn't take it forward immediately. But in the end, by 1983, I managed to get money to produce this the monitor that I sent you, and so we started making a noise on this. And also, we started looking with some of our sections, because there were a few sections set up then. So in Argentina, for example, we did a big study on illegal adoptions from Argentina. And of course, Argentina has now put a stop to inter-country adoptions. And we in general, we were documenting abuses. And to some extent making them known as well within the UN working groups. And of course there was the special rapporteur that was already in place. I honestly don't remember on which particular subject, but I know that it provided an entry into the UN on this issue. So we were working on it, we were working on it quite assiduously, I would say, at that point. So that's how I got into the issues. No, I also felt, I mean, that for me, the whole concept, if you wish, of or at least the practice of intercountry adoption was a kind of microcosm of rights issues. So it dealt with just about everything from identity, which actually was not an issue at that time. But it dealt with everything from identity, family relations, and this sort of thing, through to access to health, access to education, etc., etc. So it did bring together the whole range of rights. Am I going on too long?
No, it's fine. When you talk about the rights-based approach, I mean, this is how it sounds almost a little bit similar to how I got into this field, because as you know, I just got into this field by coincidence. Oh no, because I'm adopted and actually wanted to find my mother. So that was my entry into this, and I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I mean, I was a rather happy adoptee and thinking very positively about adoption. So when I went into this, when I looked behind the curtain, and I found the same things as you then probably in Latin America. And so when we talk about the rights-based approach, I mean the thing I don't really understand, just in general. So when we talk about the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, it actually mentions very much continuity. And when we talk about the Hague Adoption Convention or the UN guidelines, the focus is on permanency. So what, from your perspective, led to this?
Quite a good question. I think that the idea of permanency has come very much from the pro-adoption lobby, if you wish. I mean, the forever family, this sort of thing. Yeah, this outlook on what the benefits of adoption, if you like. I think that I take a different view, which you may say is the same, but it's not in my view, in my thinking, and that is stability and security. All right, and you can have stability in change, in situations of change, and so stability is not the same thing for me as permanency. Now, I'm not suggesting by that the idea is to change, but what I am saying is that I want to get away from, I've always wanted to get away from this idea, this is permanent, etc., etc., and the only way to ensure permanency is through a legal contract, which where you become responsible, all right? Which is, something that is totally Western as a concept anyway, and is rejected or unknown at the least, to the majority of societies in the world, all right, including obviously the Muslim societies, Islamic societies under Islamic law. So I think that well, first of all, I mean, it's a long story, Arun. No, it is. In the 70s and 80s, there was more and more concern being expressed about how adoptions were taking place, but the concept of intercountry adoption was not really being questioned. All right, it was how it was done, and not the fact that it was done. All right, so I think that in the first draft of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the only mention was that states parties should facilitate adoption. Right? By the end of that was in 1980. By the end of that period, we got to a stage where it was very much a protective issue. In other words, that the best interests of the child shall be the paramount consideration. All right. So it was no longer a question of facilitating. It was a question of when adoption takes place, you have to make sure that the rights of the child are the best interests. I don't like that concept, but you have to make sure that the rights of the child are paramount. All right. So already there was a big change in optique, but it still wasn't obviously something that was putting into question adoption itself or inter-country adoption itself. We're just saying, just giving the recognition that things needed to be tightened up. All right, which was the same approach that was taken for The Hague, although it was totally independent of the drafting process for the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So the decision, I think, was taken in '87, before the Convention on the Rights of the Child was adopted, to draw up a Hague Convention. And there, I mean, again, I think that we were dealing with a practice, an established practice. So the established practice itself was not put into question. But the two things, one, in the title of the treaty, you've got the protection of children, right? Which again, underlines. I mean, you may think this is just somewhere up there. It's not. It translates a very clear approach to the issue. And the second thing is, of course, the one of the three objectives of the convention is to put a halt to sale and trafficking and abduction in inter-country adoption. So I mean, there's a very clear recognition that it was going wrong. Yeah. But again, not putting into question the practice itself.
Yeah. Yeah, that brings me.
I just want to add one thing there. We also have to make a difference between, I think, on the one hand, rights issues, and on the other, ethics. And I think, whether or not inter-country adoption should be taking place is, at the very least, a major ethical issue, which has rights implications. Absolutely, yeah. Whereas rights is not an ethical issue. The rights of the child in that process are a rights issue.
The problem with ethics is that almost goes into an area of philosophy. So that open. I mean, if we talk about ethics in the country, then we get into real. Anyway, my next question goes in the same direction actually, and and I'm not asking here for a legal explanation. I have actually really read. I'm not saying everything, but I always read something more. But I read quite a lot of on whatever is written about how to define illicit adoption, illegal adoptions, where the difference to the sale of children is, and where the difference is in this trafficking is. So I do understand the legal nitty-gritty details. So I'm just really now personally, away from the law, and maybe here ethics come into play. Let's take that word. I use that word trafficking, so I should explain what trafficking for me means, so that otherwise you don't understand what I'm saying. So for me, trafficking means the violation of human rights means to reduce a human being to something which can be exchanged. And I take it very personal. I've given a TEDx talk also explaining how my whole original identity on paper was removed, replaced with my current identity, and how deep this goes. So for me already the total change of identity with almost no way back, because also we cannot do back time, already close on trafficking. So that's my subjective definition. And of course, as an organization, we define trafficking as when on a policy level or even in an individual case level, the rights of a child have been violated or that there have been breaches of children's rights. So, but how do you see trafficking? How do you define it? And I don't mean sex trafficking here also, I mean really in the context of adoption and inter-country adoption. Where and how do you define it, or how would you like to see it defined in law?
How to do that without being a little bit legalistic, although I am not a lawyer.
Me neither.
Yeah, sometimes I think that the distinction between, say, a little bit, what's the word, artificial, in a way, first of all. Secondly, I think that, trafficking is essentially, in the way that we're talking about it, is essentially the passing of a person to another person without that person's consent, but not necessarily for an illegal purpose as such. I mean, you know, there was a lot of debate over whether trafficking had to have an illegal purpose, right? Such as sex trafficking, this sort of thing. But I mean, I tend to avoid the idea of trying to link too much inter-country adoption with trafficking. I mean, there are clearly many instances where trafficking, in my mind, takes place within the inter-country adoption. But I don't, you know, I focus much more on the individual issues. I mean, you know, falsification of documents, manipulation, bribery, all that kind of, all those individual acts that together for me, you know, make up what is the basis for an illegal adoption. And I'm much more focused on that than I am on whether or not, you know, actual trafficking is involved.
Let me just close the door. I don't know why we have a door working. But can you give me an instance? Can you give me an instance which you remember where you would say this is trafficking? I mean, a particular scandal or something? Just an example, a concrete example.
Well, the Romania experience is just full of examples like that. That's absolutely clear. I mean, there was a whole system in place which enabled children to be moved from a family, sometimes through an institution. At one point, it was said that it was decreed that adoptions could only be done through institutions. So families were placing their children in institutions, and from there, you know, there was the middlemen took over and provided kids for adoption to the several thousands who were descending on Romania at that time. and you know, I was there. My first visit to Romania was in February 1991, so a year after you know, all hell let loose in that country. But we started working with Alexandra Zugravescu, who was sort of heading up the Romanian committee, and who was, in my view, a remarkable woman. But again, you know, I mean, in that kind of situation, I mean, certainly we, I say we because I was there, I was working for DCI, and I went with a colleague from International Social Service, and we were, I mean, one of our conclusions was that there should be a moratorium, which was put into place effectively very quickly afterwards, and there was a change of law and so on and so on. But you know, again, we were looking to see how this could be managed in what seemed to be a reasonable way, but not saying that everything should stop. Why? Well, because there was no interest in that. There was no. It was not something that was on the agenda either of the Romanian government or of obviously other governments concerned, particularly other governments concerned.
Sorry, I didn't get the last. What you said, particularly the other government concerned. You said.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
No, I didn't get the last thing you said. You said the government's concerned, and then I think you named the government, but I don't know.
Oh, it was not on the agenda. I mean, you know, stopping completely forever inter-country adoptions was not on the agenda of either the Romanian government or governments of receiving countries.
Okay, receiving countries. Yeah,
all right. So, but again, you know, the only credible basis that I found, or that we found for our work, was to rely on international texts, all right? And by that time, you know, we had the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Inter-country adoption was a recognised practice. It's in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. There are rights implications to that, and therefore, you know, what you do in our position is to say, okay, you know, how can we improve respect for rights within this recognised practice? So that's essentially it. Of course, the negotiations on the Hague Convention were underway at that point, which was a really interesting exercise as well. But clearly, you know, I mean, from an international human rights law standpoint, inter-country adoption was recognised, so we take that as the starting block and move forward.
And that actually almost answers my next question. What, and I can also a little say about me. You will laugh your head off when I say this, but you know, I would have adopted myself, I think, even back in 2003. I mean, I would have adopted a child. I was not against adoption, or not against inter-country adoption. So what made my mind change on this was to follow or see the work the European Commission has been doing, particularly DG Enlargement has been doing in getting Romania, you know, in compliance with the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and of course seeing what would, let's say, the trafficking or abuses of the inter-country adoption system, which I found here in India, and which, you know, in Ethiopia, but beginning only India. And I saw in particular the receiving countries not taken care of, because I thought if I bring the receiving countries the information, the evidence, I mean, it will be taken care of. And the scandals which I uncovered and exposed in 2007, between 2006 and 2007 and then onwards, nothing has been dealt with. So this made me very clear when we say stop inter-country adoption, and that is actually, I think, where we have been clashing over the years about this question. So why, and you answered the question, I understand it's a recognized practice. Why not just say stop? So maybe you can explain a little bit more still about why.
Yeah. Why?
Yeah, why not say stop? Stop inter-country adoption. Like the RSJ, by the way, the RSJ, this Council on Criminal Law and Youth Welfare in the Netherlands advised the Dutch government to stop inter-country adoption. So they did that. So why, as human rights organizations, child rights organizations, and experts, why can we not go on that position and back this up and say, let's stop it, it's enough?
No, I think there's two major things. I mean, there's the first is that what I think that we've been able to learn in the last 20 years, in particular, since, let's say, since there was a major increase in the number of countries that have ratified the Hague Convention. I think what we've been able to learn is that if we use the concept of the best interests of the child, as I said before, I don't like it, but nonetheless we've got it. If we use that judiciously, we can say, like Paraguay did, that since the best interest of the child is the determining factor in whether or not there should be inter-country adoptions, it's not in the best interest of the child that the child be sent abroad for adoption. And therefore, we're not doing inter-country adoptions. And that was basically the idea behind Argentina as well. Although Argentina was saying, we can't ensure that the rights of the child are being respected in inter-country adoption situations, and therefore we're saying that any foreigners who want to adopt have to live in Argentina for 5 years, I think it is. So that's one thing. I mean, we can use a certain number of arguments in relation to that. The second thing is, what do you call inter-country adoption? Does it mean any situation where a child is removed from a country to live in another country, or are we talking about programs? Now, if we're talking about programs, then I'm absolutely on board. I think that what we've seen in various, various ways in the last 30 years is that when you actually have programs, either bilateral or whatever, when you have agreements between countries that there be an inter-country adoption program, then that to me is the main source of the problem.
Yeah.
So
I'm talking about that. I'm not talking about, I mean, whatever. If somebody is adopting his niece because the parents died and they're living in India, and now the family is, other part of the family is living in the United States or in Germany, and they want to bring their child to Germany and maybe adopt it because it's an orphan. Wow. I mean, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about exactly these inter-country adoption programs where we have, for example, in the Netherlands, we don't have, for the Netherlands, the largest sending country in 2019 was Hungary, and the children are actually taken out of foster care in Hungary. And I think, though even the paperwork may not be fabricated, I think it's just an impossibility to take out children from foster care to bring to the Netherlands. I mean, you know. And I'm talking about this, and I'm talking, of course, about the program with India, where children who are older children, 12 years, they are labeled special needs, and they go to Malta, Italy, and the United States with preference. So I don't think that's. I mean, I don't understand how we can do this to an 11-year-old child, where they actually have to relearn the language, they lose their original language, and they have, if they're unlucky, they have even learning disabilities afterwards from that, you know.
Yeah. The connection wasn't very good there, but I think I got the gist of what you of what you were saying. It's not the fact that you're not. It's not that it froze.
Yeah, it froze in between. Yeah, I can repeat it. But I can repeat it in short.
Well, no, I think it's okay. I mean, I think that, you know, one of the problems we've had is, you know, put a stop to all inter-country adoption. Vis-a-vis, put a stop to formalized programs of inter-country adoption. Plus, of course, the whole question of agencies. Now, I noticed on that, in that respect, I saw that in this Swiss publication that you and I are actually. Did you see that?
Yeah. I couldn't read it because the article is in French, and I haven't been able to translate it yet.
No, well, and yours is in German, so I haven't been able to.
No, I have an English translation. I mean, we made an English translation. I will send you. I will publish it soon. I have permission to publish the English translation. I will send you the English translation.
Did you write it in German?
Yeah, I wrote it in German. I'm German. I don't look like German, but I am.
Oh no! I thought you were Dutch.
No, ich bin wirklich deutsch, akzentfrei, without accents.
Okay. I didn't know that. All right. Well, my article is about the fact that, you know, that throughout the whole history of inter-country adoption, it has been private agencies that are actually doing the work, and therefore, of course, that they bring in money, and that you know, we've got the source of all evil because we've allowed private agencies to be working, you know, on the mechanics of the whole thing. Unless we get rid of private agencies as well, you know, I mean, they're the ones, of course, that are essentially doing the programs ratified by governments or approved by governments, but nonetheless, they're the ones that are carrying those programs out. So, yeah, my bugbear is programs, and because of programs, agencies.
Yeah, I think there we indeed mostly agree. Where we may disagree is that I have seen the Australian adoption program, which was completely managed by Australians, by the government, and it went wrong. And of course, in Germany we have the youth welfare authorities, which are quite specialized. They're not stupid, and they are civil servants. They don't personally benefit in anything, but I've seen adoptions being handled and carried out even worse by these authorities than by agencies. So, because they can't travel, they can't check anything, they just have to trust paperwork. So, I mean, anyway, we stopped that topic of stop. The next topic is, of course, we have about 20 minutes left. I saw you, it was in 2019, I think. 19? Yeah, I think 2019 you were at the EU Forum on the Rights of the Child, is that correct? Or was it 18? I think 19. And I actually very much appreciated that you made a point of saying that, yeah, people like me, people like the children who were trafficked, sold by Romania, and scores of adoptees are now trying to actually, reconnect with their original identity or family they're searching. And that was also the reason of my article in the Swiss magazine. We have now investigations into inter-country adoption in Switzerland. We have some review in Denmark, some review in Sweden. Only in Germany we don't talk about it, but in the Netherlands we have the Austria committee. So, but there's nothing. There's nothing. I mean, that was also when I went to search. I turned to international social service, and they couldn't help me. And that's how I built this up. What we are now doing. Can you hear me still?
It went a bit, but keep going.
Yeah. So basically, there's nothing, no organization, no authorities, which really help adoptees, and it's very worrying because, for example, we lost in Belgium Belgium, Netherlands, and Germany. I know of 6 suicides of adult adoptees between Christmas and New Year. This one.
6 what?
Suicides. Suicide.
Okay.
So,
wow.
and that is massive. And I think one factor is that there is no assistance available for adoptees. A, with searchers, and secondly, with mental health problems.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And the recognition, is gradually coming. It always takes time. You don't, these things are incremental in general. There's more and more recognition with the report in Ireland on the baby homes. Yeah, there's more. They all have their limits, all right. They all have their limitations, but nonetheless, they are, I would say, major steps forward. The follow-up to the Swiss report, is being taken seriously. It's not just a report that is being binned. It's a report where now they're setting up commissions and this sort of thing to see how precisely this kind of what reparation, and also I think that what we need to do very much is to say, okay, absolutely there has to be investigations and reparation, etc. But it's not just a thing of the past. We need to learn from that in order to proceed in the future, and also the fact that there will be so many kids who were adopted in the 2000s and 2010s, Ethiopia in their thousands, where procedures have not been respected clearly, and there will be major problems in terms of finding their roots, discovering their origins, and they need to make sure that right now that there are, that we're keeping the documentation as much as possible, because if that, if in 20 years' time some of these children need to find their roots, then it will be that much more difficult. So we have to make sure that it's seen as something that is necessary now, as much as to do something about the past.
But so then, of course, the question how I, as an organization, and I'm a private organization, though I don't like to be a private organization, but that's unfortunately what it is, and we don't have much other opportunities because the governments are not doing it. So the question is how our organization, as a private organization, could actually get the child rights organizations on board of at least because it's not so complicated actually to, or so expensive to set up at least pilot projects to help adoptees tracing back the roots. And there are several adoptees like me. I mean, there are people from Bangladesh, there are people from Colombia who have actually, you know, I mean, have considerable success in reconnecting and reuniting families. So how, is there a way we can get the child rights organizations which actually have a budget supporting the development of such projects and programs? We're talking about programs again. It's a reverse business.
Well, I think that the first way is start recognizing what the child rights-based organizations are doing instead of shouting at them because they're not on your side, or rather they are not 100% in agreement with you, and you are not 100% in agreement with them. You know, I mean, I'm not in an organisation either, so that puts us on an equal level. But you know, I mean, the work that you focus on what is, you know, on the differences. I focus on on what brings us together. You know, I mean, I think that, you know, your attitude towards international social service, for example, you know, is just, you will, you know, you can't sit there and look at me and over the screen and say, how can we get them on board when you're you know, having diatribes against them and against me in public. Because in your opinion, you know, we're not doing enough, or we're evil. You know, I mean, you know, that's the, yeah. You either say, you know, how can we work together? On what bits can we work together? What can we push together? Or you say, I'm doing it on my own. So, you know, I think it comes in that sense. You know, it comes. You take a lot of responsibility.
My adoption, actually, I mean, just to make it personal, I mean, for me, where it comes from, as in, you probably know that in India the adoptions were scrutinized from 1972 onwards, and that was done by the partner organization. I mean, the what do you call it, correspondent of ISS, International Council of Social Welfare. It was done. My adoptive parents actually wrote to ISS asking for advice. I have to say so. ISS gave a very good advice. My adoptive parents didn't follow it. So that's another part. And then, of course, I stumbled across ISS during my own search, because it's the first organization I encountered. I don't want to really go into this right now. We can debate this another time, but I can assure you I have tried many times, maybe not enough. That can also be try to work together with ISS. So that's where it comes from. It's no excuse, but it's even more important that we actually start talking again in some way, because I never said I want to be.
You know, I mean, I agree talking, but you know, you have to come from a standpoint where, you know, emphasizing what happened 30 years ago or 20 years ago, you know, is not particularly helpful to what we can do in the future. The ICSW was doing, you know, a lot more than just acting as an you know, an ISS associate. So,
I understand that.
You know, but so I agree that we can't talk about it now. But you know, I'm using this moment, you know, to say simply that if you want to move things forward together, how can we move things forward together? Then you need to get people on board with you, and not simply making aggressive allegations all the time about the people involved. You know, Hans van Loon, you know, David Smalling. Wow, you know, it turns us off completely, and you know, as I say, you take responsibility for that, whatever your reasons for it.
I take
you have to take
responsibility.
responsibility.
I take responsibility.
And you know, I'll just add, you know, another thing, you know, on the Romania issue, you know, it's just so frightening to read what you have written about me in relation to my attitude towards inter-country adoption from Romania, which is, I mean, it's just, I don't even bother to respond, because I mean, it's just out of the, you know, I don't know where you get this stuff from. So, and I mean, I'm saying that now because you asked me the question, how can we cooperate?
No, it's fine, it's good, I take it. I take it.
Voila.
Yeah, so that's...
Do you have other questions?
Not exactly, we are almost through. Yeah, I mean, you bring up the Romania thing, but we have about 9 minutes. You bring up the Romania thing, we have of course 9 minutes, and I was not there in Romania, and definitely not. Just in general, because you bring it essentially up, because it's obviously clear that ACT was founded by Rudy Foster and the European Commission, and that none of the child rights organizations actually stood or stands behind her as a whistleblower. And as you know, she has been fired. So when you ask where it comes from, or where also maybe the aggressiveness comes from, it's that life of a civil servant who had done actually rather good work, although you may not agree in all details, as a civil servant, that she has been fired. And I mean, I would just like to know your opinion about it in relation...
Well, when I worked with her in Romania, I was very much encouraged, and felt that you know, we were absolutely on the same wavelength. When I was there for UNICEF, I was obviously having to respect UNICEF's position on the whole thing, which was more nuanced, let's say, than the one that Reli was putting forward. But I felt that you know, basically we were trying to do the same thing, and I found it extraordinarily encouraging to have someone from the EU taking that attitude. So I had no problems whatsoever with working in that way. And it seemed to me that, you know, there was a mutual respect between her and me in that regard. Obviously, you know, no two people are going to be like that necessarily, and two different organisations won't be you know, necessarily in total tune. But again, you know, basically, you know, I thought that we were working quite cooperatively, and you know, we certainly, you know, were both utterly appalled by what had happened there, and wanted to do whatever we could to redress the situation. clearly. And as I said, you know, I worked a lot afterwards with Alexandra Zugravescu. You see who she is.
Yeah.
Alexandra.
I will check it out. I don't have the name on the thing. I don't know exactly who she is, but she was in the adoption committee. She was in the adoption committee, I think. Right?
Okay. Well, she became the head of the Romanian adoption committee,
yeah.
and she was their delegate to the Hague drafting of the convention, and we worked an enormous amount together. And you know, I mean, she was on the same wavelength as all of us, you know. But there's a certain amount of realpolitik that you have to take into account. And you know, as I said before, you know, you've got to move forward. You've got to move forward, persuading, and not just waving banners around and expecting everything to change in the next 10 minutes. You know, I'm putting it obviously. You know, in my own way, but
yeah. Then I think I have most questions I had answered, and I hope that one day with ISS we can have more dialogue. I have actually rather good dialogue with the Dutch chapter of ISS. So I'm very glad about that, and I hope that we can also with ISS, because ISS is the organization to go to for adoptees, for searchers, because ISS is the only organization which receives government funding. But unfortunately, in lots of cases, ISS is not able to, you know, help the adoptees concretely with the search, because
ISS is a very small organisation. It has extraordinarily limited resources.
Yes.
It does what it can, but I would say once again, don't focus on the past. You know, in the past, Terre des Hommes was very active in inter-country adoption, right? But now, you know, Terre des Hommes in the Netherlands, you know, has broken with that past completely. So you know, build on evolution. You know, I didn't think the same way 30 years ago as I do now. Although sometimes I see articles that I wrote 30 years ago and think, oh wow, I'm still saying the same thing 30 years later. But on a lot of issues, you know, you get more experience and times change, and there's more possibilities for effecting change. And so you know, I mean, if you will allow someone who's at the end of their career to give you a little bit of advice, you know, think to the future. How can we make this work? And don't look at what happened in the past so much.
I do both, because we have to search, so that's always looking in the past. But I've been in touch, of course, with Terre. I've been in touch with Terre des Hommes, but here's the same thing, you know. It was me who got the information, and I gave it to the media, and I gave it to the Shabla, and actually everybody knows it. And we have established through our work here in India quite rather independent, established NGO partners in Bangladesh. So the same thing happens, of course, with Terre des Hommes. Just to tell you why it happens, that Terre des Hommes speaks to those adoptees who have been 1 or 2 times in Bangladesh, who have no idea how to get things done on the ground. And the same thing, of course, happened also with ISS earlier in the Netherlands, and authorities, that they speak to people who don't have the expertise. They go on holiday to India and then think they are expert. And it is not that you know, I go out aggressively and shout or whatever. It takes a while until I do that. So maybe that's a different understanding of shouting to be heard, you know. Anyway, so that's the background of this. Yeah, we are finished. And if you have questions, then you are free to ask, of course, anything you want.
No, no, that's fine. I think I've said what I need to say, and voila. Yeah, I hope you get a couple of answers from me that you can use, and voila. Hopefully you will tone down a little bit all the criticism and look to what can be done in the future. Okay, Arun.
Yeah, then thank you very much. Thank you very much for that opportunity, and yeah, for the openness.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Have a nice day.
All the best.
You too. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.